All right, so I'm testing the sound right now on coming soon. All right, cool. Good stuff. All right. Oh, all right. All right.
You're listening to Smashing the Party. This is your host, Nate Baumberger.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I can't see my face. Welcome to Smashing the Party. I hope you can still hear me. I had a bad run the other night and there was no sound. And so I'm going to try to do it again. Let me just double check my sound. Can you hear me all right? All right, good. All right. So, welcome to the party. This is Smashing the Party. You know the deal. It's been a while. I know you miss me. I know you probably haven't been sleeping because you use this to sleep. I know I'm also talking during the DNC, which I've been watching nonstop. I wanted to talk about something though yesterday when I had no sound that I felt was relevant and it kind of was eye opening to myself. I'm traveling across the United States. I've been staying in different hotels, looking at national parks. It's been a blast doing it with my partner, my favorite person, my wife. And one of the things that we did the one day was we turned on Newsmax. And it was like an alternate reality watching the folks on Newsmax do analysis on the DNC. Now, I'm not picking on, I just watched Bill Clinton say we should, not demean people and everything else. So I'm going to try to be nice, but it blew my mind the alternate reality that these folks lived in. One of the struggles I have is people will inbox me and just assume that I'm always thinking in terms of politics. And I have a gentleman who engages with me online, and he came to me one time with this concept that I never heard. And it was that Kamala Harris was the border czar. And I was like, I didn't know even how to defend it. And he kept on asking me, is Kamala Harris the border czar? And I'm like, I don't know. I never heard of that. And so, I kind of just blew it off, and I'm sure it pissed him off because, he was probably thinking I was picking on him or trying to be a dick, when in actuality, I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he came at me with a couple other things, like suggesting that the 25th Amendment was used with Biden. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like Biden stepped down? And then, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, where is this coming from? He then proceeded to say, what about democracy? Because now that Joe Biden was kicked out of the race, don't you feel like they took your vote? And I'm like, not really. I voted for Kamala. So again, all this stuff's coming at me, and I'm thinking, what, I don't know how to defend it because it seems so ridiculous. No offense to you, you know who you are, but it was ridiculous. But I didn't know where it was coming from because none of the sources that I'm tapped into are putting this information out there in this way. So lo and behold, I turn on Newsmax and boom, like a light bulb goes off in my head, and I realize that this is the mecca. This is the place where this person's getting their information, or a lot of people, actually 40 million people, get their information from Newsmax. If you don't know what Newsmax is like Fox News on steroids. They know who their target audience is, and the hosts don't hold back. So I'm watching the DNC through Newsmax, and these folks obviously are haters of what everything that the DNC stands for. The host insisted that Biden was being betrayed. In the Cheyron at the bottom of the screen while you're watching, it was like Democrats cheer Biden after betrayal. And so there's this narrative that they're building in this bubble that I entered, that the Democrats have ousted Joe. They pulled the 25th Amendment. Obama's pulling the strings. And this was all done. And they are actually usurping the leader, I guess is the word they used. But they're also disenfranchising our vote by doing this whole thing. And so on their side, in this bubble, I'm not saying all Republicans, but in the Newsmax bubble, which again, 40 million people subscribe to this network, And by the way, this is Trump's favorite network. The hosts, like, they don't hold back on their vitriol and just the kind of MAGA language that those folks use. It just blew my mind because you're seeing in the crowd folks cheering for Joe Biden. They're holding up signs saying "We love Joe," and the host stops and says, "You know what? You see those people cheering him? That's fake news. That's not real. They hate him." And so I'm just like, okay, that was bizarre. And then the other host gets on and starts talking about how the 25th Amendment, and this is, and the fact that it was taking so long for Biden to get on stage was another sham and a betrayal to Biden. They're just shitting all over him because they're making him wait. And the fact that he hasn't no one's going to be watching this, by the way, is what they were saying. Turns out it was one of the highest rated nights of all the conventions. And because people were not fucking looking for Joe Biden to fail. People were happy Joe Biden made the decision. But this bubble that I walked into, this Newsmax bubble, was almost hilarious, and I'm almost addicted to watching it because it's such an alternate reality for me. But it was enlightening, and it, I'm not trying to be like kind of meta here, but it does open up my mind somewhat to say, all right, look, people aren't crazy. They're getting fed this stuff. There's an agenda that somebody has, and there's a lot of money behind a network that's just pumping out, cranking out this craziness. So if you were a Newsmax follower and that's all you watched, you right now watch the DNC and you're thinking the Democrats are shoving Joe Biden aside despite his 50 years of service. Now all of a sudden you hear them talking about this guy had 50 years of service to the country, served his whole life, and they're just throwing him away. So they're giving him all the accolades as they try to create this narrative of internal turmoil. And it's so bizarre because it seems like they're projecting. Right now, it seems like the campaign's operating on all cylinders. It seems like Democrats, I was surprised. Normally, Democrats have everyone in the room, everyone's got opinion. We got to hear everyone out. They made this transition to Kamala Harris so quick, it's going to be talked about in political circles for years. It literally is not like Democrats to march lockstep. If you watch this show, you hear me talk about Republicans all the time, how they walk in goose step. I mean, they're all just single file following Donald Trump right off the cliff. That's not like Democrats. Democrats are like herding cats. You can never get enough of them to agree on anything. And so they lose a lot because they can't be a cohesive unit. However, this has been the greatest move of Democrats. It'll be talked about because in one fell swoop, the entire party unified behind Kamala Harris. So you go into this Newsmax world watching this, and I called this one the bubble because for me, I know I live in a bubble. I know I live in a bubble. I know that I try to diversify the sources that I get information from. I know I have my cognitive bias. I'm not, I don't have the veil of religion over me, but I have my veil of atheism that can sometimes taint my perspective and certainly have me be less of a more of a believer in the separation of church and state than maybe other people that might be as liberal as I am. So I understand that even my own views create a bubble for myself. Sorry for shaking the screen. I'm sitting on my laptop. Even my own views, I'm living a bubble, but it's just amazing when you pierce into another bubble of that reality. And the reality is so different from what you understand to be reality. But if you open your mind to it, you start to understand that, this is everyone has their source, everyone has their cognitive bias. And I understand a little bit more how someone could be coming up with some of this stuff when, we've got these networks that are doing this. I'm not going to harken back to the fair use doctrine or whatever what was it, the fair news doctrine where they had to show, and they abolished that. But there seems to be no kind of guidance on what will pass as news. And so while this Newsmax may not be a news, organization, it's probably entertainment. I'm guaranteeing you it's opinion and just entertainment. People are going to use that as news and it's going to create their own bubbles, and you're going to come up you're going to have conversations with these folks, and there's going to be a major disconnect because if they're living in this alternate reality Where again, is this person in my inbox coming to me saying, "Hey, I don't understand. What about the fucking borders are?" I'm like, "What the fuck is?" And by the way, border spelled Boarder all the time. Every time they had this conversation, it drove me nuts. It's Border. By the way, sorry, Ken, spell it right. No more fucking blaming it on autocorrect. That was personal. No, I appreciate the insight. I appreciate the folks that do engage with me in my inbox. And sometimes it's frustrating because I'm sure as frustrating as it is for me, they're thinking that I'm making fun, but I really don't know what context they're coming at from some of this stuff, that they're sending me. And so it was very enlightening opening up Newsmax. Like I said, I'm kind of addicted to it. I want to watch the RNC through it or the DNC every time through it because it's just an interesting, they've got the unfiltered DNC on and then the hosts come in and chime and they're just bombastic craziness. And they insist that the Democrats are in internal hell right now when I think, as I said before, it's going to be studied at how fast the switcheroo happened, and it's unprecedented for this type of thing to happen amongst Democrats. We just don't, everyone's included. We got to hear everyone's voice. I've often said, but Democrats need a benevolent dictator, and it's not possible. Stop. I'm not arguing for a dictator. I'm just saying that in the past, I've said, you know what? You just need someone to herd the cats. But in this case, 2024, the Democrats have pulled off an unbelievable unification. And that unification has caused all kinds of conspiracy theories to kind of branch off for folks that aren't in the know. And the other side, at least a segment of the Republican Party, believes fully that the Democrats are in chaos. They stole the presidency from Joe Biden. They had to pull the 25th Amendment. They're suggesting that Kamala was in charge of the border when she wasn't. They're suggesting that it's Joe Biden who killed the border bill when it was Donald Trump. It's just a bizarro world where things don't line up with what you can read to be true or see with your own eyes. And the best example, I already used it, but I want to reiterate, when people were cheering for Joe, the hosts, they flashed to those that don't look at that. That's not true. They're not really cheering. That's fake. They actually use the term fake news. That's fake news. So what you're seeing right now is fake. So, I mean, red flags go off when you're starting to watch something where people say, look, you see this? If I'm holding up my middle finger here and I say I'm not, that's gaslighting. That's bullshit. And so what you're seeing this whole channel do is say, hey, listen, what you see out there isn't real. What we show you is real. And of course, their perspective is going to be painting the Democrats as un-American, unpatriotic, atheists, want to burn your children and sacrifice their books, your children to the books that are going to convert them to gays. But all the boogeymen that you can think of, this channel has mustered into a perfection of just. I mean, I watch it, and thankfully, I look at it through a veil. But someone nonchalantly turning that on and thinking that's news, certainly, if that's the only source you're getting, you're going to be in a tight bubble, and it's going to be hard for you to communicate with people that are living in the real world. And so I say this to everybody, including myself. It's eye opening. I can say it sounds like I'm being condescending because I'm talking about something that's clearly lying to people. And that's why I'm talking about this. But if you're a person that watches Newsmax, open your mind, look at other sources, and don't rely on one source. Even if your source is the Gray Lady, if your source is Reuters or Wall Street Journal, you gotta be open to other sources to see and check the authors and check their credentials. I know it's crazy, but with so much AI generated content and so much bullshit propaganda that's working to divide us, it's a responsibility for people to kind of burst through those bubbles. And every single motherfucking one of us are in bubbles. The one thing I find interesting, I'm going to say this is a bubble that I found pierced really quick was, on this show, we were early. I was early. My team of researchers, as you know, put together early the brain solutions, the solution brainstorming of how to get this debate debacle that happened with Joe Biden. How do we move past it? And I had suggested immediately, like, this is untenable. It has to happen. I was saying it that night. This is bad. You can go on YouTube and watch in real time. And so you had that like craziness. And I was one of the first people, because I did it right at the base, said, this is done. This has to happen. And the reason I'm saying that is you had a lot of folks that were like, that was a betrayal. That was a betrayal to the party. And you had Fetterman going out there and saying, how dare you? Anyone that suggests Joe Biden is unfit is completely ridiculous. And I'm like, Fetterman's just losing points with me left and right with his whole shaking Netanyahu's hand and then this crap. He was the guy that was calling everyone assholes for saying, hey, let's switch out. If you switch out Joe Biden, you're going to lose. And so again, that was a bubble that Democrats were in. I remember there were people, friends of mine. I was not quiet about my belief that it was untenable to keep Joe Biden, but the Democrats were in this weird bubble that, magically, to the credit of the DNC, they were able to burst it really quickly by throwing Kamala in there and getting her up and running. But there were folks that in the Democratic Party were in this bubble like, oh no, anyone that's against Joe is anti-Democrats and you're fucking up and you're going to help Trump win. And so they were completely lost in this bubble. And then all of a sudden they pierced out of the bubble. They saw, hey, it's not that bad. They took a risk. Political consultants, as I was saying, I said political consultants would never do this. And so, I was wrong. I love being wrong. I love being, I hate being on I told you so mountain. But when I'm wrong and things are good, I'm happy. I was wrong. Political consultants actually pulled it off, did the switcheroo, got outside of their bubble of safety, and made the right decision. So, look, it's not a parallel quite to the bubble of Newsmax, but it can tell you that we all have that propensity to fall into a trap of kind of falling into what's comfortable and only listening to that thing, and then kind of creating a narrative that's going to support that, and then any other alternative fact that doesn't go along with that belief. Look, this is cognitive bias, cognitive dissonance when it's negative, but this cognitive bias, cognitive dissonance means that you're saying, look, even in the face of facts, I'm going to ignore it because deep down inside, I have this other belief of how reality should be. And that has been the biggest complaint I've had about Donald Trump and what he's done to this country is that he's kind of had people create this alternative reality. I mean, they've literally coined the term alternative facts. This is so Orwellian and so weirdly scripted, but I think what comes down to getting us out of that is opening up, maybe watching Newsmax. Look, I'm not trying to give any credit to Newsmax, but I think that if you can understand what the folks around you are talking about, and so now when somebody says, hey, Kamala was the border czar, I can say, oh, okay, I understand why you're saying that. You're saying it because she was tasked with some things that had to do with preventing people from migrating to the border. So she was working with Central American countries and South American countries to prevent those migrations. So she was tasked with that. She wasn't specifically tasked with the border. However, they've decided to lump all that under her as being the border czar. So at least I understand where they're coming from now. It still doesn't make sense and there's nuance in there, but piercing your bubble is good for everybody. And I think watching something like Newsmax makes me appreciate the diversity of sources that I've tried to have. And I'm not sitting here bubble free. I know there's people that watch this show that get pissed off because I don't have a lot of Republican counterpoints on here. I try to make it real, but right now, let's just be honest. Republican Party's fucking gone apeshit crazy. They're the Trump Party. I mean, one of the things that's amazing watching the DNC, whether you're watching on Newsmax or whatever, is watching these Republicans advocating for Kamala Harris. And so to me, those folks are piercing their bubble like no one. I mean, they're putting a lot of them say former Republican, Lieutenant Republican governor of Georgia or whatever it is. They're formers because they essentially said, you know what? I care about my country more than I do politics, and they burst their bubble. And so there's going to be times, I hope very few, where I'm going to have to burst my bubble and be wrong. And there are times where you guys already saw where I'm wrong. And I love when I'm wrong and things that good happen. But I think it's more important for me and everybody to keep an open mind, try other sources, try to understand people. Look, I'm mean and nasty on here sometimes. You know how I feel about Trump. I will vote for placenta over him. I use that word specifically to draw that imagery, but it's important to at least open your mind and try to appreciate that these other humans, believe it or not, may have different perspectives on politics. But when it comes down to brass tacks, we all have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all want to feel validated. We all want to feel loved, all that stuff. So those are the things that can actually unite us, and that's what it feels like when you're watching the DNC, whether it's through Newsmax compared to the RNC. And I think that if more people get out of their bubble and start acting like you got to be this rugged individualist and do everything on your own and realize that we can do some things together, it's not fucking goddamn communism just because you're working together with motherfuckers. I mean, that's what churches are. That's what community centers are. Those are places where people get together resources to do things. So, look, I'm glad to be back. I know I've been a little bit off beat here, but I'm having the time of my life right now driving across this country. It's absolutely beautiful. Everyone's going to Europe. Surprise, surprise, America is fucking gorgeous. So I'm not posting pictures to make people jealous. I'm enjoying it. But I will say I miss being in the studio and I miss the fact that I know my sound's off and I haven't been able to talk. But the DNC is just killing it right now. You got, I mean, the Obamas were on fire last night. You can't get close to that. It's hot. I don't even know if I can address it. It was so fucking hot. They have been holding their tongue for how long? They've been living in their bubble of saying, look, we've got to be prim and proper. We've got to be perfect. We're black. We have to do everything perfect. We cannot make mistakes. And all of a sudden now, her mom's passed away. They're on that stage and they were like rolling up the sleeves. In fact, if you noticed, Michelle didn't have to roll up her sleeves because she was wearing sleeveless. And don't forget that Kamala had a tan suit on Monday. These motherfuckers aren't playing. They're doing callbacks, hard callbacks, reminders. The scandals of the Obama presidency were what he. I think he liked Grey Poupon or some shit, and he wore a tan fucking suit. And maybe he smoked a cigarette or two occasionally and snuck one or whatever. But the fact is that it was nice to see them pierce their bubble of kind of protection and kind of let loose. And so, look, today's topic was the bubble. I went all over the place. It started with Newsmax and me piercing my bubble and saying, wow, holy misinformation channel, blowing my mind. I'm watching it for entertainment. But it also, if I take a step back, it also helps me understand that there are folks out there that have desires, have needs, just like me, and they're getting validation because something they're watching is kind of filling those gaps and helping them feel better, or at least giving them some hope. And in this case, when you watch Newsmax, it's really creates this them. Those guys are fucking it up. They're the ones that are causing all the problems. And so I think if I were talking specifically to somebody on my channel, I know I am, who watches that, take a break and move to Fox News. I never thought I'd say that. Move to Fox News, start watching Sean Hannity. But Newsmax just seems to be a bubble that's, oof. It's right there with QAnon. All right, anyway, but I do have a better understanding of some of the things that are coming at me. And I think that I have to do that more often. I used to do a little bit more. I do get tired of the same old threads across all the major networks. So if you watch a thread, typically, if it's something that's going to advocate for one party or another, maybe Fox won't show it. But you can watch CNN and you can watch MSNBC and you can see the threads of bullshit. The analysts, I'm being honest with you, they're not that good. And I was watching with my wife, and she said the same thing. Like, it's not that impressive. I mean, the one guy's crying after a speech. I get it; it was emotional, but like, dude, step your game up and fucking be you're an analyst. So I'm just gonna criticize the analysts on there, and I will tell you that someday you guys will be like, "Holy shit, Nate! Look at you! We ran with you." Anyway, let me breathe, get back to the point. The bubble. I burst my bubble a little bit. I learned a little bit more about the opposition. I'm going to try to do less mockery and more understanding, but I'm not going to fucking eat shit. when, just like Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we used to go high, but it seems like they're so low, we have to swing low. So I want to keep it real, but I also want to make sure that we do get to the policy and the fun stuff because it sounds like if we get Kamala Harris in office, we can actually start doing some things that actually make a difference for the next generation. No kids, but I'm still concerned about what the fuck this country looks like for all my brothers and sisters, aunts, nephews, and nieces, and all that shit. So let's do this. Anyway, look, I'm rambling. It's a long day. We're having a blast. I'll be back. Hopefully, you got something. Hopefully, it was long enough to put you to sleep. Hopefully, you heard the sound. And we're going to get out of here. But I'm in Flagstaff right now, by the way. I'm enjoying it. Or no, I'm in Sedona. I'm in Sedona, Sedona, Arizona. One quick anecdote about Sedona. So I walk into, was it Sedona or was it Flagstaff? Flagstaff. I ordered some Himalayan and Indian cuisine, I think it was. And I walked into the restaurant and I did have a black is beautiful shirt on. But I mean, I just walked in like this and they were of Indian descent and they were quickly as soon as I walked in, they're like, "Hey, where's your phone number from?" And I was like, "Oh, Pennsylvania," because I had to leave them the phone number. They're like, "Oh," and they're like, "Who's gonna win?" And I'm like, "Win what?" I'm like, "Okay, this is pretty bold to start talking politics." I just said, "Win what?" And he's like, "Win. Who's gonna win?" And I was like, and I kind of picked it up, and he's like, "You guys." I said, "Well, we're kind of purple." But he was kind of, I thought it was interesting. We're in Arizona, and I thought it was very forward of this person to talk to somebody, just randomly about politics. But there are so many ads run locally. There's so much going on locally with this state because it's a battleground state that you can start to feel. And I think he was, he saw my shirt. I'm just assuming he felt like I was probably on the side. I mean, I'm not going to be a Trumper wearing black is beautiful, right? No. But so I think he made the assumption, but I remain neutral. But I found it interesting that he was so comfortable just to bring up politics with a complete stranger. Obviously, I was buying food from his restaurant. He doesn't know if I'm going to be back, whatever. But it's a good thing when we get to that point. When we were at that point where people were scared to talk about it and you just assumed Trumpers would get mad. So I take that as a good thing. I'm again leaving the state, bursting my bubble all over the place, learning about this country. It's fucking gorgeous. So I'm gonna summarize everything. I wanted to just talk about the bubble that I pierced on Newsmax, how it opened my eyes a little bit to see and understand some of the crazy or let's just say non-traditional information sources that were produced on there and some of the perspectives that they have. However, it also, as I start to get more comfortable about where I want to go, I definitely want to make sure to reach people. And I don't want to just ostracize people that are completely misinformed because of their source. Doesn't mean I'm going to be nice guy. Doesn't mean I'm not going to say fuck and shit and probably piss you off and keep the 18 and over thing on Facebook just because I don't want to get fucking shadow banned and shit. But it does put me into a perspective of saying like the possibility of having Kamala and kind of killing the Republican Party as it is now by reaching out to those folks and independents. Look, that's what Smashing the Party was about. I'm not all about the group thing. I'd love to see more coalitions. I'd love to see more bipartisan good work. Like, why can't we do bipartisan healthcare? Like, everyone get behind it because the data shows how good it is. There's totally a possibility to get to that point where we're looking at the raw facts, but we got to pierce our bubble. You got to open your mind. You can't be just stingy asshole Nate all the time. And that's what I wanted to say. So keep watching the DNC. I know it's going to be good. Oprah was on. Pete's coming up. I don't want to take any of your thunder. Watch this tomorrow. Hopefully you had sound. Thanks for listening. I will be back. Peace. Let me see if I can get a decent outro. And we'll do